Space Arena.
SAGA Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Space Arena Ground Arena, where we cover Star Wars Unlimited from the ground up into space. I'm BananaCrapshoot, and joining me tonight, special guest. He's been on here a few times to talk about winning deck lists. Tonight he's here to join me for the podcast. Two-time PQ champ, Sam. How you doing, Sam?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me. So, real quick, for the people that don't know who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Why you like Star Wars Unlimited, all that juicy stuff.
Wow, this is a lot of pressure. This is probably going to be the most pressure-packed question of the podcast. I'm Sam. I don't know. I live in Cleveland, Ohio currently, so play around the Northeast Ohio scene. I don't know. I spent a good amount of time playing Magic, and then quit that, and then got into Star Wars Destiny through you and a couple of the other Saga team people that were into Destiny back in the day, so I joined up and loved Destiny a lot. And then when Destiny, bit the bullet, it was sad, and I spent a lot of time trying to find another game to get into until Star Wars Unlimited came along, and it's great. It's got all the kind of high points of Destiny and wrapped up into a new package. So yeah, it's been good.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me again. I think tonight we'll talk a little bit about rotation. It's been like a month since our last podcast, I think. So we'll hit rotation a little bit. Maybe like a look back at the set 3 PQ season. And then looking forward to set 4. Those are like the main things we want to hit. And then when we get off the rails, we get off the rails. It's bound to happen.
Sounds good.
Last week, a group of us got a house in Pittsburgh and went to the Pittsburgh PQ. So I think we'll just talk about that real quick. I thought it was a cool event. It was ran pretty well for the most part. Had one hiccup, only one repairing right in the beginning because of a technical snafu. I think it was more of a melee issue than a store issue. But other than that, it went pretty smooth. I had every intention of playing Han Green, and then the night before the event, John smashed me with Django like 3 times in a row. And then I was like, all right, so I brought out Cad and then beat Django, which was a bad matchup for Cad, but I put some stuff in there to work on that matchup and then won that one in our games. So then I swerved last minute to Cad, ended up finishing 4-3, beat 2 Sabines, a Cad yellow, and an Anakin yellow, and then lost to a Krennic ECL and 2 Djangos. And I thought I played pretty well. Looking back, I don't think I had any real big misplays I can think of. Every game that I lost was within an action, so they were really tight, which most CAD games are really tight. You usually don't blow people out. So
no regrets about the last minute swerve.
No regrets. So I'm good on my end. You fared a little better than I did, so just why don't you give us a quick recap of your weekend in Pittsburgh?
Sure. I agree. I thought it was a good tournament from an organization perspective. It was a lot of fun. The store was nice. They did some nice things, like provided, lunch for all the players, which was cool. And
Death Star cookies.
Yeah, the Death Star cookies were clutch. Can't forget those. But anyway, yeah, I ran back Quinlan again. So I know we did I think you can find our recap of the Columbus event from the last PQ I attended. Pretty much the same deck. I mean, I think I changed 3 total cards. I put in a Pillage in the main deck and 2 Change of Hearts in the sideboard, because it seemed like from the time of Columbus to Pittsburgh, the meta had kind of shifted to a little more slower decks, kind of rampier or control decks were more popular, which, kind of tends to happen, I think, at the end of the meta. People stop playing the aggro decks and want to play more kind of janky fun decks. So made a couple of small adjustments to try and account for that. I don't know that any of those changes really mattered that much at the end of the day. But yeah, well, I won that event, I guess. I should mention that, so can't complain. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to jump in here quick, the one matchup that you had to play twice that I don't think any of us really saw coming was Thrawn. and not probably a Thrawn most people are thinking of. That deck was pretty wild. Why don't you talk about that
Yeah,
real
that
quick?
deck was cool. This guy was playing Thrawn with Security Complex. It was basically all space aggro, and he's playing like 3 outmaneuvers and Ground Arena and Foresights, basically just trying to shield and buff space guys, and then use Thrawn ability and like outmaneuver and some other events to just basically keep the Ground Arena locked down while he slowly chips you to death in space. It's an interesting concept. I think if Thrawn as a leader deployed at 5 instead of 6, it might be viable. Anyway, he did well. I mean, congrats to I'm terrible with names. I'm never going to remember his name. But, he played that deck into top 8. So I played him in the very last round of Swiss, and then we got paired up again in the top 8 match, first round of top 8. And I will say Quinlan seemed like pretty much his worst nightmare between Falcon bouncing and pinging off shield shenanigans and eating up his space units, and then, like the kind of bounce and exhaust effects that Quinlan has available to it. It did not feel like a good matchup for him, but he did well against everything else that was there. So that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So that store I think was called the Feisty Goblin. It was a cool store. The owners were super nice. I'd definitely go back if they host another one.
I'll say one thing that I thought was cool about the event, compared to Columbus at least, the field felt a lot more diverse. Like, I think other than that Thrawn back-to-back, I played a different deck in every single round, which is quite different from the Columbus experience, where it was like all Han and Sabine the whole time. But I think they said, there were only 4 Han decks out of 82 players or however many people were there. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool. All right. So that was our weekend. Rotation was announced recently. So I know we both played Star Wars Destiny. That had a rotation. And they're basically using the same rotation model here. So we'll have 3 sets 1, 2, and 3 will rotate out and no longer be Premier legal, right? They'll still be allowed in other formats. But for Premier, no sets 1, 2, or 3 once set 7 releases.
Yeah.
So do you have any takes on the rotation model? I wasn't a big Magic guy, so I don't know how they do their rotations.
It's changed I think it's changed like 100 times in the course of Magic's history. So I don't know that there's even a standard. There's probably a model now, but it's been too long since I was involved. But anyway, I don't know that I have any particularly strong or hot takes about rotation. I mean, you kind of knew it. You should have known it was coming, and I think rotation is a necessity for any kind of TCG over the long term. I think it's just too hard for new cards to make an impact if they have to keep competing with like an ever increasing number of sets before them. As far as the specific rotation decisions that were made, they don't bother. I mean, like, am I gonna feel like I didn't get to play Twilight cards enough in a year from now, 3 more sets of cards later? I don't think so. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh no, you're taking Twilight from me too soon. But, like, that's not to be dismissive of people who think there's a better model out there. It just doesn't, I don't know, doesn't particularly worry me.
Yeah, I think like early, my thought was, man, that's a lot of cards to cut at once. It's what they did in Destiny, but the sets in Destiny were way smaller. I feel like we're losing, we're going to lose like 750 cards out of the card pool. I was hoping, I guess, for a rotation where like when set 7 would announce, then just one set would rotate out. But that, from like a game design and game balance perspective, that's probably way harder to do well because you're only dropping 1 set versus 3. I think that's a lot probably easier for them to stay on top of game balance and like to make sure stuff doesn't get too wonky.
Yeah, I guess the other thing to say is like it also kind of gives an opportunity for some things to potentially like pop in competitive play that wouldn't otherwise. Like, for instance, this set right now, Jump to Light Speed, that we're going to talk about, is being introduced with 3 sets in play right now, and people expect it to have a big impact. It certainly seems like it will. The cards are pretty good, but maybe it doesn't. Like, maybe it falls flat, piloting doesn't work, there's too much, like, I don't know, anti-piloting kind of builds available. Well, if you rotate out 1 set at a time and set Jump to Light Speed is never in a like meta game that doesn't have 5 or 6 sets involved in it, maybe you never get a chance for like Luke to shine as a leader versus we take the first 3 sets out altogether. And yeah, I know you still have whatever 4 sets. It's not really like reduced number of sets, but you take all of those cards at once out of the card pool, and maybe the what's coming in the future sets doesn't interact quite as well with piloting as what's out there right now, and you get a chance for like piloting as a mechanic to pop more effectively. And that's just like hypothetical. Like I'm not saying I don't think piloting's going to be good or anything. I'm saying, like, as a rotation decision, doing a kind of mass rotation, it also creates some breathing space for the new block that you might not get otherwise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I think you're right. I don't really have anything else on rotation.
No, I mean, it'll happen. The only thing, I guess, do you have any particular excitement or anticipation about the Eternal format that we assume will develop as well?
I'm a fan of those as for like casual play. I don't know if I would be like a huge fan of like an Eternal like PQ, right? I mean, I guess that could be cool, but depending how you design future sets, like you're bound to find stuff that's broken and busted that shouldn't work together, that works together in a format like that. So I'm a fan of it for like casual events and Eternal format. But I think like if Twin Suns uses Eternal format, like if you don't have to use the just what's in rotation for Twin Suns, I think that could be a lot of fun with the singleton.
Yeah, I know people around me are excited about the Twin Suns change with this set too, going to 80 cards from 50.
Yeah. Your area seems to do a lot more of like the other stuff versus just like all the stores, here they just do standard.
Yeah, there's a couple places near me that like are pretty popular Twin Suns havens. Not like for Twin Suns events, but it's like, hey, come out to a weekly play and afterwards people stay and like run Twin Suns once the event finishes. It's kind of a common thing. So yeah, it's cool.
That's fun. It gets you to, it's more casual and probably gives a nice break from like the competitive grind. And then also you get to play cards that you like forgot existed or see people play cards and combos like, whoa, that's crazy, so.
Yeah, I've been running Luke Mandalorian in Twin Suns for most of this set. It's been pretty fun. You like kind of you're never really ahead, but if you actually get to 6 resource and get to deploy both Luke and Mando and equip them with stuff, you can kind of end the game very quickly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun combo.
Yeah.
You didn't try like Anakin and Luke for like a little like father-son duo?
No, that would probably also be quite good.
If you could deploy them both. Yeah, because the one can shield the other and then...
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
It's a little Twin Suns talk for you. All right. We are getting to the end. I think we got one, like this weekend's the last weekend of PQs. I think you're playing in one again. In Ohio somewhere.
Yeah, it's near Canton. It's actually the closest one to me, but I think it's going to be a little smaller. Like, I'm expecting it'll be more in the 50-60 range, and, it'll be good. I'm playing a different deck than Quinlan. I haven't exactly decided what deck I'm going to play, but I'm not going to run Quinlan back a third time. Mix it up for this one.
That's good. Give other people a chance to win, Sam.
Yeah. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. So looking back, I'm going to share this from SWU Competitive Hub. I think it's this one. Boom. So here we go. So this is the winners. You can see by leader and base and just leader totals. So Mono Han has won 24% of the PQs.
Yep.
Doesn't seem too surprising based on if you followed along with the meta of this set. Does that number seem high? Does that seem like a healthy number for one deck? What do you think?
It seems about right. I mean, there's always gonna be a best deck, right? So, 25%. I'm nothing to be too worried about there, in my opinion.
1 out of every 4. Yeah, I don't think that's too much to worry about. Because what was Boba's in set 1 or in last season, like before he was banned? It was like 50%, right? Pretty close to 50%, if I remember correctly. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, you take into account, like, all of the events that he was, like, the entire top 8 as a leader,
Yeah. Between green and mono, you'd get 1 or 2 Sabines in there then, and then that was it. All right, so we got So the top leader base winners we'll look at the top 5 is Han Yellow, Sabini CL, Django Tarkentown, Quinlan Tarkentown, and Han Green. So Han showing up twice in the top 5 for most winning leader base combinations.
Yep.
So it definitely seems like Han, Sabine, and Django are like the top. Those are all the ones that get above 10%. And then it gets really wild after that.
Yep. I think maybe the most noteworthy thing about this list is that there's no blue until you get down to Anakin at what, 7th place?
Yeah, with 3.8% of the winners. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, what all the takeaways from this PQ season are for everybody, but one of them seems to be like blue had a tough time this PQ season as an aspect, I think.
Yeah. Here, this is just top 8, so that maybe this is better to look at. So this is the leader in bases and then just the leaders, and the percentage that they made top 8. Percentage, I guess, of the meta in top 8, right? So same thing. It's the same here pretty much. Until you get down to blue with Anakin and Bosk.
Yep.
I'm surprised like that Quinlan hasn't won more. Because like you said, he doesn't really have bad matchups, but maybe it's just because he doesn't have free wins.
Yeah. Django and Han probably both make more individually powerful plays. Even Sabine for that matter, like all the 3 decks ahead of it. Between Cunning, Wrecker on ECL or Darksaber or just like Sneak Attack Ruthless Raider. Like those in a vacuum are probably individually stronger actions than any single thing Quinlan can do. But so if you put players of kind of equal skill against each other and give one of them the more powerful, I don't know, action in their arsenal to take, then maybe that edges them ahead in top 8s. But it's hard to say, really.
Are you surprised that cunning and aggression are the most well represented in both top 8 and winners?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's kind of just like it seems like where we are right now in terms of a card pool, the like hand hate, the discard and kind of like disruption effects are a lot stronger than the draw control effects, and I think you kind of see that in the there's a lot of different kind of nuance to the leader base interactions that are out there right now, but just in general, there's almost no efficient card draw, really. Like, there's Pershing, that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you start counting up the, efficient hand disruption cards, like Force Throw, Spark of Rebellion, Kira, and, it adds up pretty quick. Yeah, Bodhi Rook. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just a matter of where the game's at right now, really.
And then, do you think this meta has been super tempo oriented? Do you think that's good for a card game's health? Do you think that's bad for a card game's health?
My personal take, it's been fine. I think one thing that's good about this kind of meta is you don't get a lot of you don't play a lot of non-interactive games. Like in set 1, when there was the item blue unitless deck, those games were pretty non-interactive, right? Like they just sit there and cast event removal, event removal, event removal, milieu. Oh, you're out of cards. Okay, sorry. So we don't have a lot of games like that. That said, I think in general I prefer metas to change, and to give opportunity to different deck styles and different kinds of play. So I wouldn't necessarily want to keep like aggro tempo as the dominant force for like, I don't know, 3 more sets in a row. Like I do kind of hope that at some point, whether it's next set or the set after that, control style decks or at least like more kind of mid-rangey, slower decks make a comeback a bit from where they're at right now.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen in set 4. Just on initial play testing with some of the new stuff this week, it seems it might have got a little faster, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, so down to the bases, I don't think anybody's really surprised that the most well-represented bases have been Tarkentown and ECL. ECL is really good when you can give stuff ambush that shouldn't have ambush, and when you have strong when played effects like Wrecker and Poe. Not surprising that ECL is up there, and Tarkentown, with the amount of leaders that do ping damage now. Quinlan, Django, Cad. Not a surprise for those.
I don't know about you, but I'm pretty shocked to not see Jeddah City on this list. I mean, really. Such a powerful rare base. Didn't make a single top 8.
Doesn't look like it, no. Security Complex 3 times.
Yeah, Security Complex at least represented, but no Jeddah City.
Jeddah City, the only one not on here. From set 1 at least. I think that's Petronaki Arena there.
Mm-hmm.
And Droid Manufactory, and I don't remember what the blue one is.
Yeah, me neither. Oh, Pal City.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. For +1 health.
I think that's the mono blue Obi deck, right? That was playing Pal City to give Obi-Wan an 8th health.
Yeah. So that's the set 3 meta, basically, in a snapshot, is this right here. So, not too surprising. I know it seems like Han and Sabine dominated, which they kind of did once they got to top 8. But when you look at the percentages of top 8s, like it's a pretty good spread, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think overall for the PQ season as a whole, it was a fun and interesting meta, in my opinion. And, I'll be interested for a shakeup coming with set 4 here. I'm ready for that. But it's been a good PQ season with this meta that we've had.
Yeah, I think so far this has been my favorite from between set 1 to set 2 and set 3. Set 1 was really, I think it was a good start to the game. Set 2 wasn't my favorite meta. And then set 3, I think, has been the best one so far, but that's my opinion. All right, set 4, Jump to Light Speed's coming. What are your initial thoughts? Have you done any initial testing? I know you've been kind of theory crafting some stuff. What's your initial take on Jump to Light Speed and how it's going to impact Star Wars Unlimited?
I think it's going to have a big impact. I mean, just in terms of cards played, like some of the spoilers that have already happened are just seem like straight up upgrades of some cards that are played now. So I think from a power level perspective, like it's going to be better than set 3. Now from a gameplay perspective, I don't know. I haven't done, to answer your question, I haven't done like a whole lot of testing. I have some deck lists kind of started that I've been fiddling around with, but I haven't really been on Karabast playing set 4 yet, mostly because I've been in PQs and stuff, and still there's some set 3 events still going on. And also like there's a lot of the set that hasn't been spoiled yet, so I try not to jump the gun too much on testing the next set before everything is revealed. Just seems like you're maybe setting yourself up to be foiled by something that's not revealed yet. But from what I have messed around with, I think one of the interesting things early on is going to be people who are trying to build piloting decks getting the right balance of vehicles and pilots in their deck. There's only a few exceptions, I would say, to like most of the pilot designs, you want to play them as pilots. Like playing any of the pilots as units is kind of like not the most efficient thing you can do because there's better units than what you're playing in the game. Like for instance, even like the legendary Han pilot, right? He's a 4/5 ambush for 5, which is not bad. Like it's certainly playable, but if he didn't have the piloting side of him, like you wouldn't play that unit in most of your decks, right? Like there's better ambushers for 5 that you can play in Cunning. And I think that's kind of true across the board. Like a lot of the cheaper pilots, like Luke and Biggs, and some of the other ones that I'm forgetting. You kind of really want to play them on their piloting side as opposed to on their unit side. Having like making sure you have a ship available and not having too many like I kind of feel like in my deck building you want a couple of key pilots that can be really good, but you don't want like an oversaturation of pilots for the most part.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So that's where I'm at, and some of the pilots are pretty good. Like I guess the one that stands out maybe is Iden on the villain side, being like a 4/3 shielded or giving you a +3/+3 shield. Seems like a really kind of strong on both halves there. So you wouldn't mind playing her in either realm, in either arena.
Yeah, another one I think that you wouldn't mind playing is the 5-drop Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like a 5/6 shielded or something for 5. And piloting, he like deals a damage or something.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think the key with pilots is going to be finding that balance between going too heavy into space and too heavy into pilots, and then you draw all your pilots and now you got a bunch of units that don't do anything.
Yeah. So assuming that the collective hive mind solves that deck building challenge, which I'm sure they will, then I think the second most interesting thing to me is going to be kind of how the non-pilot decks respond. Like, I think we can safely say like Django is still going to be a good deck. Quinlan is still going to be a good deck. Like these decks are getting cards that make them better. And then the question is going to be, like, okay, if these piloting decks start to creep up, does that mean that the non-pilot decks like Django or Quinlan like need to have more of a space focus? Do they need to start playing like specific pilot hate cards to combat those decks? But you're not going to run into a pilot leader every game, right? So like you can't just fill your deck with anti-pilot cards. So how it ends up balancing out, assuming that there's a couple pilot decks that do become kind of tier 1 competitive, whether that's Poe or Luke or Wedge, whoever, then like kind of how the other decks respond to that is going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah,
I see
I don't know.
You have a non-pilot on our screen here.
I have a non-pilot I'm excited about on our screen. So Phasma, yeah. You're talking about non-leaders, so I threw one up here from the new set that they threw in here. One of the only non-pilot leaders, it seems like.
Yep.
It's like Phasma and Admiral Trench. But I think Phasma's going to be good. Yeah, I think it's going to be fun finding the balance, building the decks with the pilots, and then also, like you said, when you're trying to load up your Quinlan and your Django and your Cad Bane and your Han 1, like what are you doing? One, to add these new cards, and then 2, play against the decks that are only using these new cards. Like how's Django going to react to like a Luke or a Poe deck?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be interesting to see. Especially if Poe's jumping around from ship to ship all the whole game,
Yeah. The other thing too is if there is like a dramatic shift towards kind of space pilot based decks, I wonder if some units that like right now are too vulnerable on the ground, like if you're playing into decks that don't really have a ground presence, like can you get away with playing some of those units? I don't know. The one that I'm thinking of right now, which I don't think is gonna see play even if that happens, is Delmico. Delmico's never been playable because just like too vulnerable as a 3/3 ground unit. But like if you're playing against a deck that's all space units that just like doesn't really have as much ground interaction, does something like that become more of an option because there's more, shift towards space in a lot of decks? I don't know. Just something to watch, I guess, how people react to the changing landscape of the game.
Yeah, I think some of it, will also have to do with what removal packages look like, and what event packages look like. I'll tell you the one newer card that was shown that I think is pretty cool because it works as a pilot and a ground unit is the new 2-drop Luke Skywalker, where you play him as an upgrade, and then when the unity's on, would be defeated, you move them to the ground arena and exhaust them. So you can kind of, one, thematically, it's awesome, and two, you get a lot of value for those two resources.
Yeah, for sure. He's another one where you want to play him as a pilot, though.
Yeah,
Like, if you play him in ground, you basically just played Gamorrean Retainer.
yeah,
So
that's true.
he is really good though. He's a cool card for sure. I like the design of him a lot.
Yeah, I think all these cards with piloting, right? They're really cheap as pilots, right? Their play cost is like 4 or 5, and then to pilot them is like 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of Iden and the Boba Fett, I don't really see any that I would be like, oh yeah, that would be a good ground unit.
Yeah, I guess the Mando unit has like a cool effect when you play him in ground still, right? He gets to like exhaust multiple things or something.
He can exhaust 2 ground units, yeah. Actually, Dengar as like a vanilla 5/4 for 4 isn't terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I'd rather play him as a pilot because his effect's pretty strong.
Yeah.
Do you have like 2 or 3 cards you're really excited for that have been previewed so far?
Cards I'm excited for that have been previewed. I think the card that I've been trying in the most deck list, I feel like, is the legendary Han unit, just because Falcon's already like one of the best hero units and they go together really effectively. But I think No Disintegrations is gonna be a pretty impactful event with the amount of like ways to ping a single damage there are. It's kind of like Vanquish for 3 in a lot of decks, I think it's going to end up being. So I think that card, I expect to have a big impact. I don't know how good it's going to be, but the card that's like No Glory, Only Results, where you get to steal your opponent's when defeated abilities, I think that card is cool. I don't know, like I said, I don't know how much of a meta impact it's going to make, but I like the design. I'm glad that it exists in the game.
Yeah, No Glory, Only Results. That's it. You nailed it. Let me throw it up here for the people listening on Spotify. 5 cost, No Glory, Only Results. Take control of a non-leader unit, then defeat it. I'm pretty sure this is meant to work with Thrawn, right?
Yeah. Well, work with him, and also probably good against him too.
Yeah, snatch it from him. One card that I saw that I thought was pretty wild. Now I think we just saw it on their stream that they did yesterday. It's not too exciting, but it's pretty wild, I think. This Jam Communications.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 cost Bodhi effect, basically. Just what Cunning Heroism needed was more ways to screw with your hand. And it's a trick so you can search it with Jabba in your villainy decks.
Yeah. It'll be interesting what decks do with the split of that and Spark of Rebellion, like the Cunning Heroism decks. It's kind of like, they printed like Clear the Field as compared to Waylay kind of situation where you kind of got to decide, like, you're probably not going to just jam 6 into a deck. I mean, unless you're like some kind of weird cunning control deck that your whole strategy is just take cards out of your opponent's hand, which I don't know, maybe something like that is going to come about. But if you're an attacking deck, you probably can't just jam 3 of that card and 3 Spark of Rebellion and call it a day. I think you get a little too much hate there. I'll tell you the card that I'm not that excited about that I think is going to be really good is Trench Run.
Really? You think it's going to be really good?
I think Trench Run's going to be played a lot, and it's going to win a lot of games, and it's going to annoy me more than any other card when people cast it. It's just like randomly taking a roll of the dice on your unit living.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it as like a closer, right? Because it's so much reach for 1. You getting +4 is kind of ridiculous. So yeah. I see it as more of like a game ender than, like, I don't know that I'd want to play this in the middle, like round 2 or 3, but
for sure. I'm just really looking forward to having opponents like dead on board, except for they have a fighter that has like 2 health left on it and cast this card to try and steal the game, and then I flip like 2-3 cost cards over and they get away with it. I expect to lose to this card a lot and be frustrated about it.
Yeah, +4 is ridiculous for one. That seems like too much, but yeah. Any cards from other sets that you think have a shot to be good in this set that really haven't seen much play? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Not really. I mean, the one that I guess is popping up for me is the cartel turncoat, which has seen play here and there, but like rebel heroic space aggro hasn't been that popular of an archetype, especially in cunning. But if people are trying to put pilots on things, like cheaper and cheaper space units get more appealing. So I'm looking on the lookout for cartel turncoat to be more of a presence. Other than that, I don't know.
Think Bamboozle's going to be
Oh yeah,
everywhere.
that's a good call out. Yeah. Bamboozle becomes like a main deck in any cunning deck, pretty much. I think.
Yeah, even Villainy, because you can just discard another card and play for free.
Yeah. Yep. Just like defeat a pilot leader for 0 cost. Great effect.
Yeah. Yeah, Bamboozle.
And it's better than Confiscate. Like people are all up in arms about Confiscate. The thing is, like Bamboozle is still a good card, even if they're a Phasma deck, right? Like you still get a free exhaust effect versus Confiscate. Like if you're playing against Phasma, that's a dead card probably. So.
Yeah. And I was gonna say something. The another one that hasn't seen play that I think is gonna see play in red decks is Power Failure, because it can remove every upgrade. So if you got somebody that's like a rebel deck, right, that's running like wing leaders and pilots, like you can just nuke all that at one shot for 2 resources.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably more of a sideboard card versus Bamboozle. I expect to see in a lot of main decks, but
that's fair. Bamboozle has more because you get the exhaust and not just the upgrades. There's something else I was going to ask you. It had to do with cards, and now I don't remember. Oh, the bases. You excited about any of the rare bases this set? My answer is no.
yeah, not really. There's a lot of like available design space for bases that is unexplored, and messing with deck sizes would not have been at the top of my list, but here we are.
With what?
Deck sizes.
Okay. I was just making sure.
Just making sure, yeah.
Yeah, so making sure I heard you right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not like messing with mulligans and hand size. Like that's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. They're so weird, man. Like the yellow one is weird. Like there's not really combo decks kind of right now. Like I think if you're playing just a straight up deck, I don't know. I'm not like I haven't run algorithms or math or whatever, but for the most part, I think I'd rather just take 6 cards twice than 9 once.
The one that I think has the best chance is Thermal Oscillator, because
Yeah.
it reduces your deck size, so you can just increase your consistency.
I think that one is good with any of the tribal leaders where you have like limited tribal options anyway. Like the resistance, first order. There's a zillion rebel and underworld cards, so it's less relevant for those. But any of the stuff that's like
Ewoks, Gungans.
Yeah.
Gungan Thermal Oscillator deck, watch out.
Even some of the old leaders like that were looking for specific things like Hondo or whatever, just like having to play less kind of second rate cards that you're building around your leader ability is valuable.
Yeah, it lets you get rid of the filler cards and you can just get down to business.
Yeah. The blue one is going to be interesting. I think people will try the blue base. Like the extra health is definitely a good bit, but man, it feels bad drawing one less card to start the game.
Yeah. Considering you resource 2 of them.
Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm not. None of the new bases are really like getting me too worked up.
What new leader are you most excited to play?
The new leader that I think is most obviously in a position to succeed is probably Asajj, just because of like how well her ability pairs with Tarkentown, and that's already a tried and true, like proven combination thing with Tarkentown. The new leader that I think is most interesting right away is Poe, because he does a thing that we haven't really seen leaders do, which is get kind of like a repeatable presence on the battlefield. So we'll see. I don't know how good or bad he'll be, but he at least is a pretty interesting deck building question that new players are confronted with now.
So, turn 1, you can play a turncoat. and then use the action to put Poe on the turncoat.
Yep.
Wait, no. I need to think of a different unit. That doesn't work. Is there a red 1 cost or green 1 cost space unit? There has to be, right? I'm totally brain farting.
I think they're only in yellow.
Well, then that doesn't work. I was going to say, all right, well, then it would have to be like a turn 1 A-Wing, and then turn 2, you can use 1 resource, put Poe on it, swing with the A-Wing, and then you can eject Poe.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have a 4/6 ground unit leader.
Yep.
Seems pretty solid.
Yeah. Who, assuming they get defeated, you will get to deploy again onto the ground. Or in space. Either way, get to use them again.
But yeah, you can use eject to cheat him back and forth.
Yeah. One interesting thing is if you put him on a vehicle early as a pilot and the opponent has some way to like kind of neutralize that unit without defeating it, then they kind of like are robbing you of a leader deploy while they get one. Even if they just like delay it until you're at like, 6 or 7 resources or whatever, and then like you don't, basically if you don't deploy Poe on 5, then yeah, you got value out of him as a pilot, but I don't know how it'll even out versus your opponent gets a leader on the battlefield and you don't,
Yeah. That's why I think like you run green and then you have eject so that you can get him out there early. But yeah, because then you can swing with him and then use his action. Put him. You can get like double value out of him.
Yeah, for sure. Seems like a good little combination there.
Seems like a sequencing nightmare. Like it's gonna take some skill cap to sequence right to get the most value out of that stuff.
Yeah. One more thing on set 4 that I'm not excited about is the amount of time that is going to be added into games from people making indirect damage assignment decisions.
Oh, yeah.
It's like there weren't enough decision points already, and now we're adding like a pretty complicated one in the middle of a combat step. So, I don't know, I think that's going to like make games just take longer naturally.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when I'm dropping planetary bombardments.
Yeah.
In Phasma.
Planetary bombardment is going to be a big player for sure. That card is quite strong.
It's been doing well so far in my initial. So our Pittsburgh PQ, that was like it for set 3 for me. So after that, I've gone into get ready for set 4. So I've been messing with Phasma and the new Han and the new Poe and then going back and seeing how like CAD, updating CAD and stuff. And so far, like planetary bombardment's been super solid in Phasma at least.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite set 4 deck so far, early testing?
It's definitely between, so Phasma ECL has just been pretty strong early. The Phasma unit is a 5/6 with a when played /1 attack ability to buff another first order card, +2/+2. So if you can deploy Phasma and then ECL the other Phasma, then Phasma's like an 8/10.
Massive, yeah.
And you just spike, right? 8 damage to base, and then planetary bombardment, like as a follow-up play. And then you still have the Phasma to deal. You're dealing 11 with the Phasmas on that same planetary bombardment turn, so you're dealing 19 damage to base in 2 turns, and then adding planetary bombardment onto it. So, it bursts pretty hard on the ECL play if you have Phasma unit. Yep. So that one's been fun, and the new Han going like all odds, running both 3-drop Falcons and Chewie and now Boshek that I overlooked initially to just refill your hand. Just makes it more consistent. But that can spike pretty hard too if you have Chewie and either of the Hans as pilots on, you're hitting for like 11.
Yep.
That can get pretty bursty too. But those two, the Phasma ECL and the new Han with I'm just running it with command right now. Yeah, Han 3 and Phasma, those are the two that I'm most excited for at this moment.
Awesome. Yeah, they both seem like they're going to be pretty strong. How strong? We will see.
We'll see. Don't know. I didn't really have anything else planned. I'm keeping you late enough, so do you have anything you want to end the show with?
Nope. I'm tapped out. Tapped out, man.
All right.
I think we covered the high things, the high points of Star Wars Unlimited these days. So Hopefully, I held up my end of the bargain here as the guest presenter of the meeting the high standards set by the Saga podcast crew.
There's going to be a survey that'll go out that people will fill out, and I'll let you know once I get those results back to my Google form. But thank you for giving up your time and your evening to join me here for the show, and for all of us at Space Arena Ground Arena. We'll see you in the arenas.